The twin suns of Aelysia burned gold across the sky, shining over the silver towers of the alien capital. The city floated above the clouds, powered by ancient engines that only the high-born scientists of the Aelysian race understood. Or so they believed. In the grand observation hall, a group of tall, elegant alien women stood around a glass window watching a hologram display. Their skin shimmered like pearl and their eyes glowed faintly blue. Each wore flowing robes with symbols of intellect and power. These were the finest minds of Aelysia, engineers, nobles, and scholars. At the center stood Lyra Vithar, daughter of the High Scholar. Her tone was calm but proud as she spoke. Humans, a primitive species still chained by gravity and emotion. How could they ever compare to us? The others nodded and laughed softly. For generations, Aelysians had viewed humans as fragile creatures, too emotional, too slow, too limited. To them, Earth was just another world of dust and noise. Then the alarm rang. A deep pulse echoed through the sky and lights flared red across the city. The glass window flashed with a message. Unidentified vessel crashing. Sector 9. The laughter stopped. The women turned to the window where a burning streak cut through the clouds. A small ship, human-made by its shape and crude design, spiraled downward. Flames surrounded it until it disappeared beyond the mist. Lyra frowned. A human ship, here? Moments later, rescue drones were sent out. Within the hour, the wreckage was brought to the city's lower docks. The air was filled with the scent of smoke and metal. Guards in silver armor surrounded the site, their weapons humming softly. From the wreckage, they pulled one survivor. He was a man, tall by human standards but small compared to the aliens. His dark hair was burned at the edges, his uniform torn and blackened. His name tag read Ethan Cross. Despite his injuries, his eyes were sharp and steady. When they carried him into the hall, the alien nobles stepped back in quiet disgust. Lyra tilted her head. He's conscious? The man looked around at the glowing walls and the group of alien women staring at him. Instead of fear, he gave a tired smile. So this is what the galaxy's smartest people look like, he said softly. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. One of the scholars whispered, "He dares speak?" Lyra gestured for silence. She walked closer, her long silver hair flowing like light. You are far from home, human. Your kind is not welcome here. Why have you come? Ethan took a breath. It wasn't planned. My ship was caught in a storm. I was heading toward a research outpost before everything went wrong. You crashed into restricted airspace, she replied coldly. You will be examined, then judged. But before they could take him away, the power in the hall flickered. The lights dimmed, machines sputtered, and a loud hum filled the air. The floating city trembled slightly. Gravity core instability, one of the engineers shouted. If it fails, the city will fall. Panic spread through the hall. Technicians ran to their consoles, typing frantically. Sparks burst from a control panel and the floor tilted. Ethan pushed away the guards and ran toward the open terminal. Move aside, he said. Lyra glared. You cannot understand our systems, he ignored her. Kneeling before the core display, he scanned the alien symbols flashing across the screen. He didn't know their language, but he understood the logic. Circuits were circuits no matter the world. He grabbed a loose cable and tore open his wrist device, a human tool made for repair work. Sparks flew as he connected wires. Stop him, a noble shouted. He'll make it worse. But Lyra hesitated. Something in his movements, calm, precise, confident, made her wait. Within seconds, the humming stopped. The lights stabilized. The floor returned to level. The hall went silent. Ethan stood up, smoke rising from his hands. There, he said. Your stabilization grid was looping feedback. Fixed it. The guard stared in disbelief. One of the engineers whispered, But how? That system took us decades to design. Ethan shrugged. Maybe you overthought it. A ripple of shock and anger spread through the room. Yet Lyra's eyes stayed on him, searching his face for arrogance and finding only quiet resolve. She stepped closer. You risked your life for strangers who mocked you. Ethan smiled faintly. Guess that's what we humans do best. Her expression softened, though only slightly. You speak boldly for someone who stands among those who could end him with a thought. Then maybe think slower, he replied. A few of the guards smirked despite themselves. Lyra turned away, hiding her reaction. Take him to the science wing, she ordered. I want his mind examined before his body. As they led Ethan away, whispers filled the hall. He shouldn't have been able to fix that. Is he really human? Impossible. They're too simple. Lyra watched him go, her silver eyes narrowing in thought. The human had done in minutes what their brightest minds could not. That night, from her balcony high above the glowing city, Lyra looked toward the stars. The words of the human echoed in her mind. Maybe you overthought it. A strange feeling stirred within her. Part curiosity, part admiration, she whispered to herself. Perhaps we have been wrong about them. Far below, in a secured chamber, Ethan sat on a bed of silver light, staring out at the alien world that now called him an intruder. But in his heart he felt something else, opportunity, and somewhere in the silence, destiny had just shifted. Ethan woke to the sound of soft humming. The walls around him were alive with glowing blue veins pulsing like the heartbeat of a machine. He sat up slowly, his body aching, his mind alert. He was no longer in a prison cell, but in a clean, circular chamber filled with alien instruments and hovering lights. Standing nearby was Lyra. Her expression was calm, yet her eyes carried a question she did not speak. Behind her, a group of alien scholars waited, their robes shining faintly under the cold light. You are awake, Lyra said. Good. You will now take part in the council's evaluation. Ethan rubbed his temples. Evaluation? You mean a test? Call it whatever helps you understand, she replied. The council believes your actions during the power failure were luck. They wish to confirm your intelligence before deciding your fate. Ethan gave a half smile. So fix your problems again or die trying. Sounds fair. The aliens didn't laugh. They led him through long corridors that opened into a massive chamber, the Hall of Intellect. Rows of glowing consoles lined the walls, and in the center stood a circular platform surrounded by observers. Above, the alien nobles watched from glass balconies. A voice echoed across the room. Human Ethan Cross, you will complete 3 tasks. Each represents an aspect of Aelysian mastery, logic, engineering, and creation. If you fail, your species' reputation will be confirmed. Ethan stepped onto the platform. Let's get started then. The first challenge began. A projection formed in front of him, an intricate puzzle of symbols and pathways, constantly shifting like a maze of light. An alien engineer whispered to another, It took us 5 hours to solve this simulation. Ethan studied the puzzle silently. His fingers traced invisible lines in the air. He didn't understand the alien symbols, but he saw the pattern behind them. It wasn't about language, it was about rhythm. Within minutes, he rearranged the lights into a stable flow. The hall went quiet. The display flashed green. Task 1 completed. Lyra's lips parted slightly in surprise, though she quickly hid it. The observers murmured among themselves. Begin the second test, the voice commanded. This time, a console opened, revealing a set of broken energy conduits. Sparks jumped between the coils. Repair it, the voice said, and without tools. Ethan crouched beside the device. He touched the conduits gently, feeling the vibration through his fingertips. His mind worked fast, measured the current, checked the flow, traced the overload. He tore a strip from his sleeve and used the metallic thread woven into his uniform to reroute the current. The sparks vanished, replaced by a steady hum. He stepped back. Done. Gasps spread across the hall. One alien exclaimed, He used fabric as a conductor? That's primitive, but effective. Lyra watched closely now, her scientific curiosity overpowering her pride. She stepped forward and asked softly, How did you know the energy level? Ethan smiled faintly. By touch. We humans still use our senses. Her expression softened for a moment. We stopped doing that long ago. The voice spoke again, sharper this time. Final test. The trial of creation. The floor shifted and a new device rose from beneath the platform, a blank cube of metal and light. Build something functional, the voice said, using only your understanding. Ethan looked at the cube, then at the scattered alien components floating nearby. He closed his eyes for a second, thinking. The aliens watched silently as he picked up wires, lenses, and fragments of crystal. Minutes passed. He moved with purpose, his hands steady, his focus absolute. When he finished, a small device stood before him. Something simple, almost primitive. What is that supposed to be? One scholar asked with disdain. Ethan pressed a switch. The cube projected a clear holographic image of the city, every tower, every street, rendered in real time. But at the edges of the hologram, red zones blinked. Those are your structural weak points, Ethan said. Your city isn't as stable as you think. You've got stress fractures along the western stabilizers. The council members looked at the map in disbelief. Engineers confirmed the data. It was true. He had found the problem no one else had seen. Silence filled the chamber. Then the council voice said quietly, "Human."
How?
Ethan crossed his arms. Sometimes when you think you're perfect, you stop seeing the small things. Humans survive because we notice the small things. The hall stayed silent. The alien nobles who once laughed now watched him with quiet awe. Even those who still hated the idea of respecting a human said nothing. Lyra walked toward him. For the first time, she bowed her head slightly. "You passed every test, and you made us look where we refused to look." Ethan shrugged. "I just did what anyone from my world would do." "Then perhaps your world deserves more respect than we gave it," she said softly. As he was escorted out, the council whispered behind closed doors. Some wanted to study him further. Others wanted to send him away before he changed more minds. But Lyra looked up at the glowing ceiling, thinking of that simple human man who solved puzzles their greatest thinkers struggled with. She had never met anyone like him, and in her heart she knew this was only the beginning. Days passed after the trials. The city of Aelysia buzzed with whispers about the human who had outsmarted their finest minds. Some called him a miracle. Others called him a trickster who had somehow fooled their systems. But no one could deny one thing. Ethan Cross had become a name every alien now knew. Lyra spent her nights replaying the data from his tests. His logic, his reactions, his creativity, none of it fit within the limits of their understanding. He was unlike any being she had studied before. He was unpredictable, and that made him dangerous. But deep inside, she also found it fascinating. One morning, as the suns rose over the city, the sound of metal clashing echoed from the training grounds. Ethan followed the noise and found a large arena filled with alien warriors. They were taller, stronger, and faster than any human. Their armor gleamed under the light, and their energy weapons sparked as they moved. As soon as they noticed him, the crowd began to whisper. "That's him, the human who thinks he's clever." A tall warrior with sharp violet eyes stepped forward. His voice was deep and proud. "You may have fooled the scholars, little man, but here we value strength. Will you face me, or are humans only brave behind machines?" Ethan smirked lightly. "I'm not here to fight." The warrior laughed, his voice booming through the arena. "Afraid?" Lyra appeared at the edge of the arena, her robes flowing in the wind. "Enough, Commander Varrock," she said. "He is not a soldier." Varrock ignored her. "If he refuses, he proves our belief." "Humans are weak," the crowd murmured in agreement. Ethan glanced around, realizing that every pair of glowing eyes waited for his answer. He could walk away, or he could show them that humans had more than one kind of strength. He stepped forward. "Fine, I'll take your challenge. But I choose the terms." The warrior folded his arms. "Name them." "No weapons," Ethan said. "No armor. Just us." The aliens laughed loudly. To them it was absurd. Varrock grinned, showing sharp teeth. "Agreed. Let's see what strength your fragile body holds." The duel began. Varrock charged first, his movements a blur of speed and power. Ethan barely dodged as the alien's fist slammed into the ground, cracking the stone. The crowd cheered. Ethan rolled aside, breathing steady. He couldn't win with brute force. He had to think. He remembered the gravity fields surrounding the arena. They were adjustable, used for training at different intensities. His eyes darted to the control panel at the edge of the ring. As Varrock came at him again, Ethan ducked under the swing and threw a handful of arena dust into his opponent's glowing eyes. The alien roared, stumbling back. Ethan ran toward the control console and slammed his hand on the switches, overloading the gravity field. Suddenly, the air grew heavy. Everyone in the arena felt the pull. Varrock dropped to one knee, his strength struggling against the crushing force. Ethan, smaller and quicker, stayed low and moved carefully. He darted around the warrior, using the field's weight against him. Varrock tried to rise but slipped, his own power turning against him. Ethan used that moment. He pressed a button that shifted the field again, flipping the direction of gravity. Both of them lifted into the air. Ethan twisted mid-flight and used the momentum to push Varrock into the ground as the gravity returned to normal. The impact shook the arena. When the dust cleared, Varrock lay stunned, his armor cracked, his pride shattered. Ethan stood over him, breathing hard but smiling. Sometimes strength isn't about muscle. It's about knowing how to use what's around you. The crowd went silent. For the first time, no one laughed. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her eyes filled with something between awe and disbelief. "You'd turned our own technology into a weapon." Ethan shrugged. "You built it. I just used it smarter." Varric rose to one knee, his head bowed slightly. "You have my respect, human. You fight with mind and spirit. Both are strong." The other warriors thumped their fists on their chests, a sign of respect among their kind. Lyra watched Ethan as he walked past her, his steps calm and steady. She had studied hundreds of alien species, but never had she seen anyone who could turn weakness into power so effortlessly. As the crowd dispersed, she approached him. "You realize you've just embarrassed one of the most feared commanders in the city?" Ethan grinned. "Then maybe he'll think twice before calling someone weak again." Lyra didn't smile, but her voice softened. "You're changing how they see you, how they see all humans." "Good," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time someone did." As they left the arena, the wind carried the whispers of the crowd. Some spoke with anger, others with wonder. But one truth had taken root in every mind that watched that fight. Humans were not inferior. They were something else entirely. The victory in the arena spread through the city like a storm. The name Ethan Cross echoed from every hall and tower. Some spoke it with admiration, others with fear. In a world that had never respected humans, he had forced them to look twice. But fame brought more than attention, it brought danger. Lyra noticed it first. Strange transmissions began flickering through the communication network. Unknown signals coming from the outer rings of their defense grid. She brought it to the council's attention, but most dismissed it. Just interference, they said. No one would dare attack Aelysia. Ethan, however, didn't believe in comfort. He had spent enough time among soldiers and survivors to recognize the unease before disaster. He found Lyra in the observatory late that night, her eyes focused on the stars. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said quietly. Lyra nodded slowly. "The readings aren't normal. It feels alive, like something searching. Or watching," Ethan added. Before she could respond, the entire city shuddered. Alarms blared across the towers. The voice of the High Commander echoed through every channel. "All defense units to positions. Unidentified vessels detected in orbit?" Lyra's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The outer shield should have detected them long before entry." Ethan followed her to the command center. Through the wide glass, they saw dark shapes moving in the clouds above. Massive alien ships, black as obsidian, surrounded by swirling red mist. Their arrival was silent but terrifying. "They're breaching the outer shield," shouted one of the officers. "How?" another cried. "Our technology is impenetrable." Ethan moved to the control console, scanning the readings. "Not if your systems were already compromised," he said. "Those signals you ignored, they were mapping your defenses." Lyra's heart sank. "You mean someone fed them our data?" "Exactly. You were hacked long before they arrived." Explosions rocked the horizon. The alien invaders fired beams that tore through floating platforms. The elegant silver towers began to fall from the sky. Panic filled the city as citizens fled through glowing corridors. Lyra turned to the council's generals. "We must activate the planetary core shield." One of them shouted back, "It's damaged!" "The stabilizers haven't been calibrated since the last upgrade." Ethan grabbed the nearest console. "Then let me do it," the generals glared. "You're a human. You can't possibly understand." Lyra cut them off. "He can. He saved this city once. Let him try." Ethan's hands flew over the controls. The alien interface was complex, but his mind was faster now. He understood how their technology thought, how it breathed. He rerouted power from the secondary reactors and forced the grid to stabilize. "Come on," he whispered. "Hold together." Lyra watched as the shield began to flicker to life, a shimmering dome forming around the city. For a brief moment, hope returned. Then one of the enemy ships fired a massive energy pulse. The dome cracked like glass. The control panels exploded in sparks. Ethan was thrown backward, his arm burned by the blast. Lyra ran to him. "Ethan!" He groaned but stood back up, smoke rising from his sleeve. "It's not enough. The shield can't hold. We need to overload the reactors and use them as a defense surge." Her eyes widened. "That could destroy the entire city." "Or save it," he said simply. She hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Together, they ran through the chaos toward the reactor chambers. The halls were filled with fleeing civilians, the walls trembling under distant impacts. The sound of alien engines roared above. Ethan reached the control core and began rerouting energy flow. "Once I trigger it, you'll have to time the discharge manually," he said. "I'll do it," Lyra replied, her voice firm. As the final sequence started, the ground shook violently. Through the transparent ceiling, they saw enemy ships descending closer. Ethan looked up, then back at her. "Now!" Lyra slammed her hand onto the control crystal. The reactors exploded in a surge of blinding light. A massive wave of energy expanded outward, engulfing the sky. The invader ships disintegrated one by one, consumed by the storm. The city shook, but the shield held this time. When the light faded, silence returned. Ethan fell to one knee, exhausted. Lyra rushed to steady him. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. Through the shattered glass above, sunlight broke through the clouds. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "You might want to update your defense manual." Despite the destruction, Lyra laughed softly for the first time. "You just saved our world again." Ethan stood slowly, his voice calm but determined. "No, we just bought time. Whoever sent them will come back." Lyra looked toward the burning sky, her expression serious now. "Then next time, we'll be ready." As the smoke cleared, the people of Aelysia stepped out of hiding, gazing at the human who had fought for them when their own leaders hesitated. For the first time in their long history, they bowed, not out of fear but out of respect. Far above, deep in the void, another signal pulsed. Someone, somewhere, had seen everything, and the galaxy would soon know the name Ethan Cross. The city of Aelysia floated in silence after the storm. Smoke curled into the golden sky, and the once perfect towers were now scarred and broken. But the people were alive. They looked to the one who had saved them, the human who had stood against the impossible. Ethan Cross had become more than a curiosity. He was now their protector, yet peace never lasts. Lyra stood in the council chamber, surrounded by frightened voices. Reports from outer colonies spoke of entire fleets destroyed. The same invaders who had attacked them were not gone, they had regrouped. And now they were coming back with an army. Ethan listened quietly as the alien generals argued. Some demanded evacuation. Others wanted to seal the skies and hide underground. He looked at them all and shook his head. "You can't run from something that's hunting you. You fight it before it reaches your door again." The room fell silent. His words carried weight now. Lyra turned toward him. "You would lead the defense?" "If I have to," he said simply. "But I'll need control of your fleet. And your pilots will have to fight my way, not yours." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. No one had ever given orders to the Elysian Air Force except their own kind. Yet Lyra stepped forward. "He's earned that right. Give him command." And so they did. The next day, the docks thundered with engines. Dozens of sleek silver ships hovered in formation, their pilots waiting for orders. Ethan walked among them, inspecting the vessels. They were beautiful but predictable, machines built for perfection, not survival. He climbed aboard the lead ship. Its systems responded to his touch. "All right," he said into the comms. "You've trained for centuries to be flawless. Now you'll learn how to be unpredictable. That's how humans win." The pilots listened, uncertain but curious. Lyra joined him on the bridge, her eyes glowing faintly with determination. "Then teach us, human." Moments later, the alarm sounded again. The sky darkened as hundreds of enemy ships descended from orbit. Their formation spread like a swarm, each vessel glowing red with energy. The air crackled with power. Ethan's voice came through every comm channel. "Remember, don't match them. Confuse them. Hit fast, move faster." The first shots blazed across the sky. Explosions painted the clouds in orange light. The Aelysian fleet scattered into smaller groups, moving in chaotic patterns just as Ethan had taught. The enemy fired blindly, unable to track them. Lyra's ship flew alongside his, her voice calm through the static. "Your tactics are working." "They can't read our movements," Ethan grinned. "Good. Let's show them what humans call creativity." He dove his ship toward the enemy flagship, dodging plasma fire with impossible precision. The alien vessels followed, forming a tight pursuit line. At the last moment, Ethan flipped his ship and accelerated straight upward. The pursuing ships collided, erupting in a chain of explosions. The alien commanders were furious. They adjusted their formation, focusing all power on the lead human craft. Ethan's sensors screamed warnings, but he didn't pull back. He flew directly into the heart of the swarm, forcing the enemy to chase him deeper. Lyra saw what he was doing and gasped. "Ethan, pull out!" "That's suicide," he replied calmly. "Not yet. Trust me." He locked his ship's targeting system on the enemy flagship's energy core. At the last moment, he launched his drone modules, each carrying an overcharged power cell. The drones scattered and then detonated all at once. The explosion tore through the enemy formation, breaking their lines apart. But one blast hit too close. Ethan's ship spun out of control, fire trailing from its wings. Lyra's heart stopped as his signal began to fade. "Ethan, respond!" Through the smoke and static, his voice came weak but steady.
"Still here.
Just not in one piece." Lyra turned her ship and dove toward him, ignoring the commands of her superiors. She caught sight of his burning craft falling through the clouds. With quick reflexes, she matched his descent and extended her ship's grappling beam. The two vessels locked together in the storm, descending through thunder and wind. "Got you," she whispered. The ships landed hard on the damaged docks. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Lyra ran to his cockpit and tore it open. Ethan coughed, bruised but alive. "You're insane," she said, half angry, half relieved. He smiled faintly. "And effective." Above them, the remaining enemy fleet began to retreat, their flagship burning. The Aelysian pilots cheered as the sky cleared once more. For the second time, the city had been saved by a human. That night, as the fires dimmed and the stars returned, Lyra stood beside Ethan on the edge of the tower. The wind was cold, but their hearts were steady. "You fought like one of us," she said softly. He looked out at the horizon. "No, I fought like myself." She smiled almost shyly. "Then maybe being human isn't so different from being extraordinary." The stars glowed brighter than ever, as if the universe itself was watching. And far beyond those stars, new eyes turned toward Aelysia, curious, fearful, and ready for what would come next. Because one human had changed everything. The city of Aelysia was quiet after the battle. The skies were clear again, but the silence carried a strange heaviness. Wreckage floated in the air like drifting ash, and the once shining towers were covered in scars. Yet among all the ruins stood Ethan Cross, the human who had defied every belief this world once held. He sat in the medical bay, his arm bandaged and his uniform torn. His body was tired, but his mind was restless. Through the window, he could see the endless expanse of clouds glowing under the twin suns. Victory had a cost, and he could feel it deep in his bones. Lyra entered quietly. Her steps were soft, her face pale but calm. She carried a small holographic tablet filled with data. "You should rest," she said. Ethan shook his head. "There's still work to do." "Those ships didn't come alone. Someone sent them." "You can't fight if you collapse first," she replied, folding her arms. "Even heroes break." He looked at her and smiled faintly. "I'm no hero. I'm just too stubborn to quit." Lyra sighed but didn't argue. She placed the tablet on the table and sat beside him. "You changed them, you know. The people. The soldiers. Even the council. They talk about you now with respect. Some even call you the Iron Human." Ethan chuckled. "Iron Human? Sounds better than primitive ape." She smiled, but her eyes were distant. "They bow to you now, but their pride runs deep. Respect here doesn't come free. It comes with a price." Before he could ask, the room shook violently. Alarms blared again. Lyra's eyes widened. "The reactors, they're unstable." They rushed to the command deck. Holographic screens showed the energy readings spiking out of control. One of the engineers shouted, "The core is fractured. It's the residue from the last overload. It's destabilizing the entire city." Ethan grabbed the display and scanned the numbers. "If it ruptures, the whole place will drop into the atmosphere." "We've got minutes." Lyra looked at him. "What do we do?" He didn't hesitate. "We vent the energy manually. I'll go down to the lower conduits." She stepped in front of him. "No, it's suicide. The radiation levels will melt you alive." "I don't have to survive," he said quietly. "I just have to make sure everyone else does." Her voice trembled. "You've already saved us twice. Let someone else take the risk." Ethan looked at her steadily. "You and your people still have a future to build. I'm just making sure you get the chance." Without waiting for permission, he ran out. Lyra followed despite the protests of the guards. They descended into the deep core. where the air shimmered with heat and the light pulsed like a living heart. The energy flow was wild, burning through the conduits like fire through veins. Ethan opened a control panel and began redirecting power. Sparks flew, burning his skin, but he kept going. His breath grew heavy, sweat dripping down his face. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Stop, you'll die." He met her gaze. "If I stop, we all die." She hesitated, then placed her hand on the control beside his. "Then we do this together." They worked in silence, their movements synchronized, their hands moving faster than the systems could react. Every second felt like an eternity. The floor vibrated under their feet as the pressure built. Finally, Ethan slammed the last override key. "Now!" Lyra hit the release command. The energy burst upward in a blinding wave, exploding through the city's vents and dispersing into the sky. The ground trembled, then steadied. The reactor readings dropped back to normal. It was over. Lyra turned toward Ethan. He had fallen to his knees, his hands trembling. His face was pale, his breathing weak. She knelt beside him, holding him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved us again." He smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "Told you." Stubborn. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. "No, you can't leave now. Not like this." The med teams arrived, but even their advanced tech struggled to stabilize him. His body had taken too much damage. Lyra refused to leave his side. She took out an ancient device, one forbidden by her people. It was a relic of the old world, capable of restoring life, but at a cost. Using it was forbidden by the Council. She activated it without hesitation. "You gave us your world's courage. Now I'll give you my people's power." The light from the relic spread across his body. His breathing slowed, then steadied. When his eyes opened, the world seemed brighter. He looked up at her. "What did you do?" Lyra smiled weakly. "I broke the rules. Guess I learned something from you." Above them, the city lights flickered back to life. The people cheered once more, unaware of what had truly happened below. Ethan tried to stand and Lyra helped him. Together they looked up through the glass dome at the endless stars. "You risked everything for me," he said softly. "For us," she corrected. "You showed me that respect isn't given, it's earned." He nodded slowly. "Then we're even." But deep down they both knew the truth. What had grown between them was more than respect. It was something rare, something neither of their worlds fully understood. And in that quiet moment, among the hum of machines and the glow of the stars, two hearts, one human, one alien, beat in the same rhythm. The twin suns rose slowly over Aelysia, painting the sky in shades of gold and silver. For the first time in centuries, the city's towers no longer glowed with cold perfection. They carried scars, marks of battle, proof that even the mighty could bleed. But those scars were now a symbol of unity, a reminder that one human had stood beside them when their own pride had nearly destroyed them. Ethan Cross walked along the balcony of the Grand Hall, his steps slow but steady. His body had healed, though faint traces of the battle still showed in his movements. The air smelled of renewal, new metal, new hope. Below him, the people of Aelysia worked side by side to rebuild what had been lost. Humans and aliens now walked together, their voices no longer divided by suspicion. Lyra joined him quietly, her presence warm and calm. She looked over the city, her silver eyes reflecting the morning light. "Do you see it?" she asked softly. "They're different now. They speak your name with respect, not fear." Ethan smiled faintly. "They don't need to speak it at all, as long as they remember what we fought for." "The Council is preparing a ceremony," she said. "They want to make it official. You'll be offered citizenship and a place among the High Council." He turned to her, surprised. "Me, a human on the Council of Aelysia?" Lyra nodded. "You've earned it. You changed the way they see not just you, but all of your kind." Ethan looked back at the horizon, his tone calm. Maybe that's what needed to happen. Someone had to show them that being human isn't a weakness. Later that day, the grand chamber was filled. Thousands gathered across the floating city. The council members stood on their crystal platforms, robes glowing with light. In the center stood Ethan, wearing simple attire. No armor, no medals, just the quiet confidence that had carried him through every trial. The high scholar raised his voice. "Ethan Cross of Earth, you came to our world as an accident, yet you became its shield. You defied our arrogance and reminded us of courage. For that, we name you an honorary citizen of Aelysia." Applause echoed through the hall. The sound was unlike anything Ethan had ever heard. It wasn't just celebration, it was acceptance. Lyra stepped forward holding a silver emblem, the symbol of unity between their species. She placed it gently on his chest. "You came as a stranger," she said softly. "But you will never be one again," he smiled. "Careful. You might make me stay longer than I planned." The crowd laughed lightly. For a people once proud and cold, the sound of laughter felt like a new beginning. But amid the celebration, a subtle tension lingered in the air. Ethan noticed it in the whispers of the generals and the quiet flicker of warning lights across the far consoles. When the ceremony ended, he approached Lyra. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" She hesitated. "The scouts found remnants of the enemy fleet beyond the nebula. They're regrouping. Stronger this time." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So it's not over?" "No," she said quietly. "It's only the beginning." He looked out at the stars. The same stars that once seemed distant and unreachable now felt alive, watching. "Then we'll be ready, together." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." He turned toward her, his voice steady. "Neither do you." As night fell, the city lights came alive once more, glowing brighter than ever. Ships moved across the sky like fireflies, carrying supplies, rebuilding hope. Music echoed through the streets, the sound of a world reborn. From his balcony, Ethan watched it all. The alien children running through the plazas, the engineers rebuilding the towers, and the distant reflection of two suns merging into one. He felt something deeper than victory. He felt belonging. Lyra joined him again, standing shoulder to shoulder. The wind carried her voice softly. "You know, when you first arrived, I thought humans were fragile. And now?" he asked. She smiled. "Now I think the galaxy isn't ready for you." He laughed, shaking his head. "Let's hope they learn faster than you did." Her eyes sparkled with amusement. "We learn best when the lesson hurts." They stood in silence, watching the horizon. The war might return, enemies might rise again, but for this moment, peace was real. And peace built on respect is stronger than peace built on fear. As the night deepened, a small beacon rose from the council tower, a new signal sent across the stars. A message to every world. Humans and Aelysians, united in strength, bound by respect. Far away, hidden among the dark regions of space, other civilizations received that signal. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some began to prepare. But on Aelysia, under the light of twin suns, a new chapter had begun. Ethan looked at Lyra one last time that night and said quietly, "You once told me respect has a price." Maybe this was it, she nodded. And maybe it was worth every scar. The wind swept through the balcony, carrying the scent of renewal and the promise of another dawn. The stars glowed brighter and the galaxy listened. For the first time, the word human meant something more than just a name. It meant defiance, courage, and hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, others would soon learn exactly what that meant.